Ok, grazie. No, perché l'evento sarà trasmesso per la prima parte anche su una piattaforma webinar, così ci può seguire anche chi non poteva partecipare o venire qui a Milano. Allora, innanzitutto buongiorno e benvenuti. Io sono Cristian Tubito, Material Connection Italia, Project Manager in Material Connection Italia. Diciamo che la giornata sarà organizzata in questo modo. Ci sarà un talk iniziale in lingua inglese che sarà tenuto da Rebecca Earley, che presenterò dopo. E a seguito ci sarà una piccola sessione di domande e risposte su quello che presenterà Becky e se qualcuno di voi ha voglia di fargli delle domande, eccetera. Poi successivamente invece ci sarà una panel discussion, quindi proprio una tavola rotonda, in cui chiederò agli ospiti appunto invitati di sedersi qui e discutere di alcuni temi legati appunto all'economia circolare e in relazione al settore tessile e abbigliamento. Perché Material Connection ha organizzato questa giornata? Beh, innanzitutto perché da sempre Material Connection è vicina ai temi della sostenibilità. È una delle grandi banche dati di materiali innovativi e sostenibili, materiali e tecnologie, e oggi il paradigma dell'economia circolare sta investendo anche il settore tessile e abbigliamento, come sapete, uno dei settori più importanti dell'economia globale, ma anche uno dei settori che è altamente inquinante e dispendioso sia in termini di risorse che in termini di rifiuti. Giusto per citare alcuni dati, la Fondazione Ellen MacArthur dice che nel mondo 53 milioni di tonnellate di produzione annua vengono effettuate di fibre per l'abbigliamento e il 73% di queste quantità finisce in discarica. In Europa la situazione è un po' meglio, ma non migliore. Le tonnellate che finiscono in rifiuti sono 5,8 milioni e solo 1,5 milioni vengono rimesse attraverso ONG, enti di beneficenza e altre industrie in un ciclo di riuso. La media pro capite di prodotti moda in Europa è quantificata in 13 kg all'anno per ogni persona. In Italia questo numero aumenta a 16 kg. Quindi l'Italia è uno dei paesi che può dire molto in tema di circolarità nell'industria tessile e abbigliamento, e quindi crediamo che questa giornata, come altre l'hanno preceduta, possono essere utili a cominciare a discutere di questo concetto che non è nuovo, non è un concetto nuovo, è un concetto vecchio, però è un concetto. Da quello bisogna spostarsi alla pratica. E uno degli elementi che oggi spinge a spostarsi verso una dimensione più pratica è l'approvazione, come sapete, del Circular Economy Package, che è stato approvato qualche settimana fa dal Parlamento europeo con una netta maggioranza anche, e che porta oltretutto la firma di una italiana, l'onorevole Bonafè, che è stata anche qui, ha presentato appunto questo pacchetto con altri ospiti. E questo pacchetto, tra le altre, va ad operare su alcune direttive già presenti nella gestione dei rifiuti, aumentandone le percentuali di riciclaggio, eccetera. Tra tutte, però, dice anche che entro il 2025 gli Stati membri devono attuare la raccolta differenziata per i tessili. E questo non è un obiettivo tanto facile, perché questo significa che poi quei rifiuti, che devono essere differenziati, devono essere reintrodotti nei tecnocicli. E questo implica che tutte le aziende di tutta la filiera sono coinvolte. Ora, io vorrei cambiare lingua, so I want to switch in English to introduce the first guest, let's say, international guest, that arrived from London yesterday night, because the flight was cancelled this morning, so thanks for that. Thanks to Rebecca Earley, that is the co-director of the Center for Circular Design and professor of Sustainable Fashion Textile Design at UAL, Chelsea College of Arts of London. Becky will let's say that we know that an approach to circular economy require new skills to designers, to textile design also, but also a high level of material innovation and system knowledge. So Becky is the co-director of this center, and with her colleague, her work let's say, to exploring in some way and defining future roles for textile design. In some way today, she will paint or figure out what be the next, let's say, role, but also how have to look like the textile design in the next future for the next generation of innovators. So thanks for coming, Becky. The stage is yours with these talks with the title Circular Textile Transitions, Designing Materials, Models and Mindsets for a Holistic Industry.
Thanks so much, Christine. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, it's an honour to be here. Thank you, and to have the opportunity to reflect really back on a textile design practice and body of research, and look at what that means for the future of textile design as we enter this new era of the circular economy. If you go to my website, and you can sort of see the portfolio of work there, BeckyEarley.com. I sort of started out as a printed fashion textile designer 25 years ago. And in a very traditional sense, I think, my own portfolio represents the change in design. And hopefully, when we come right up to date, it'll help illustrate where I think we need to be going. So I'm speaking as a designer and as a researcher, and an educator as well. So in co-directing a research centre, there's a team of 17 of us at the moment. We also teach the students in the university, and we also teach and support and educate designers in companies as well. So we believe that making and having our hands on materials is the best way really to understand the changes, to actually enact these new materials ourselves, so that we can then understand where they need to go and how they need to move on. So my practice evolved from hand printing textiles for commissions and for a small women's wear label, through into an art practice, a curation practice, and now really as a sort of fully fledged research professor. In this period of time, I've been working with very unsexy polyester shirts. I basically, for over 20 years, have been finding these sad, sort of stained shirts in second-hand shops and reinventing them. And as I've reinvented them, the way in which I kind of think about sustainability and approach it has really shifted. This is from another website I have called upcyclingtextiles.net, where you can really see the very first shirts, 1999, found in Brick Lane, printed with weeds from outside my studio, through the sort of different eras of sustainability, looking at co-design, looking at industrial symbiotic loops, looking at laser finishing, looking at instructional videos online to get users making products for themselves, right through into the most up-to-date and recent shirts, which are part of the Trash to Cash and the Mistra Future Fashion projects. And those are the two projects that I'm really going to look at today, because they're deeply collaborative and they're deeply connected to other experts, be them scientists or user behavior experts or policymakers. We're now no longer being textile designers working in our own studios, but we're connected, we're collaborating, and we're communicating to make the new cycles and the new systems of the future. Here's my home, rather nice, lovely house here. This is Chelsea. We're next to the Tate Britain in London, and it's been my academic home, really, ever since I left college. I didn't expect to end up being in the same place. I actually left St Martin's with a master's in fashion and had quite a glamorous label, but then I kind of started teaching, and then gradually over time, I really fell in love with teaching, and then I fell in love with research. It's the place where I can spend time with ideas. But I added up recently how many textile designers I've trained, and it's more than 3,000 students have come through Chelsea since I've been there. About 100 a year graduate from the BA course and more than 50 from the MA course every year. So over a period of 20 plus years, there's a lot of new designers we're putting into the system. So what are we teaching them? And what needs to change for the future so that textile designers can play a pivotal role in the way in which materials can be reprocessed and be used to their maximum resource retention? Here's the Centre for Circular Design lineup, and this is quite an exciting moment. We launched our new research centre just at the end of last year. Having spent 20 years with a research group called TED, Textiles Environment Design, and it's really the sort of, I like this slide very much because it's a crafting process to curate these different experts coming together, and it's part of the role of being a designer in the future is to work out who to bring into the team, how they work with each other, what they say to each other, how they connect, how that knowledge comes out of the individual in their own private space into the shared space, and how they do that, letting their ego loose, letting go of these things so that they can be taken up and used and shared. All of this is part of the way in which the design has to work differently in the future. So now I co-direct with Dr. Kate Goldsworthy, and we run a research centre that is about creating new insights and knowledge for education, but also for industries and our non-profits and a broad range of collaborators. So we travel a lot, and that's how I met Christian and through the Trash to Cash project. And one of the ways in which we kind of connect first and foremost is through the tools that we bring to the table. So rather than sort of launch straight in with materials and say, here's something I made, and you should be interested in this, we actually can't bring with our tools first of all. And this is our point of connection. This is how we sort of establish a talking point or a commonality with whoever we're meeting. I'll hand these round. These are TED's 10. These are our 10 strategies that begin any conversation. And our argument really is sustainability is complex and broad. Where do you want to start? What are you best at? What do you need to change? What's your hotspot? So it might be card number 2, which is design for cyclability. And then we gradually bring in the other cards and the other considerations so that a sustainability approach develops over time, and we can really understand each other. I've also got a green pack. These are very new. These are personal. These aren't just about design strategy. These are about the kind of person you are. Who are you as a designer? What are your values? What are your team's values? What are the company's values? What do you do at home and at work every day that's about sustainability? So all the time we're designing cards that help us connect and tools that help us work with other people. So TED's 10 was the thing that brought us into Mistra Future Fashion, where we were brought in as the design researchers to connect with 7 other sets of experts. And really it was about bringing scientists together with policy researchers, with consumer behaviour researchers, with brands to look at sustainability. And actually the focus was very much on a new fibre at the beginning. This is back in 2011. And they were making Cellinova, a new fibre from wood pulp. And part of the initiation, the induction, was to simply learn to speak each other's disciplinary language. How do you talk to each other as scientists? How do you sit down and co-create together? How do you share insights and then maybe even try to write those up together and find a place to publish from one perspective as a creative designer, one perspective as a material scientist? So it's been a long journey of getting to know each other and understand their science, and for them to understand our creative approach. We took TED's 10 into H&M, and we spent 2 years developing their sustainability, the sustainable design approach. This involved taking teams from different departments and working through lectures, workshops, bringing a product in and redesigning a product, and using tools to measure the improved impacts But again, that was in a whole other language. You think that that could be easier than working with scientists. It's actually just a sort of similar challenge, just a different language. So all the time in these projects about circular economy, we're looking at how we have to work with other people. They're very human dilemmas. They're very human problems. At H&M, we successfully applied TED's 10 strategies and took best-selling products and redesigned aspects of that product's performance to become, well, using the Higg index, up to 41% better. But the problem was, how does that go forward? How does that actually get communicated to the production office in China? How does that design team actually get that change enacted in a company? And it actually came back to human problems again. Are these the people that are able to make the changes higher up the company? Are they powerful enough? Are their arguments strong enough? Is the product able to be prototyped and tested beyond their group? So as designers, we sort of, by the end of the Mistra project in phase 1, we were coming up against the challenges of actually being more powerful as designers, being better communicators, being more strategic in actually getting change to take place. We looked also at how the consumer could be part of the system and part of the change. So as designers, we started to make products, videos and tools and instructions for people to prolong the life of the products themselves. We looked at the cultures and how they come together from the Swedish designers and the Chinese production office, and we kind of made very long life products bringing together their two cultures through craft as discussion pieces. And my co-director, Kate Goldsworthy, she was looking within the Mistra project at this idea of laser being used in a vertical integrated system so that products can be made on small scales, right from the cutting to the seaming to the finishing and decorative surfaces, all using one laser technology. And by the end of that kind of process of making, we realized that the kind of design we'd been exploring could be encapsulated through materials, as well as social models, as well as the self and the mindsets. And this framework then is what we're proposing that designers of the future need to think about. These intersections between the self and the product, the society and the self, and the product and society are incredibly important and enriching places for designers to go, but they can't go there alone. They need other experts to collaborate with, be it anthropologists, material scientists. This framework for where design is effective will require new relationships. We curated Textile Toolbox with 10 products, new prototypes, new materials that explored this framework. And from looking back at it after we finished, we realized we had inadvertently created speeds. That whilst all the products were either recycled or recyclable, some were working through the system in really short, quick loops, having circular lives but traveling quite quickly through those loops. And some were all about extending the lifetime of the product. And this was quite a breakthrough moment for us because we understood that not everything should be about slow. Although slow has been presented to us as an aspirational way to live, to eat, of course, but to actually treat our clothes in that way, we began to understand that in reality, some things would need to travel quickly. And what did that mean for materials? These are the hand-me-down bags by Howie's, and they're made to last. They're beautiful products. I bought one for my husband, the idea it could be handed down to my son. He wore it, used it every single day on his bicycle, cycling across London. 2 years later, you wouldn't want to hand it down to the hamster, let alone my son. So longevity is within context of number of uses. And fast. We don't think of fast in a very positive way, but nature does fast. Blossom is a fast product of nature, only here for 2 weeks and then gone, but we don't consider that a waste. So we were beginning to think, could there be another way to do fast, to consider products that move in a circular system, but aren't just about longevity. Fashion needs a new rhythm. Fashion needs a new spelling as well. This was a sign in an art school, but everybody's talking about slow. We wanted to talk about fast as well. So in order to take on this complex challenge of speed, we expanded the team and looked at involving, for phase 2 of Mistra, life cycle assessment experts, recycling technology experts, and business models experts from Copenhagen Business School, as well as our team here working on the materials development around fast and slow. How could we make paper feel like cashmere? How could we make paper be compostable? Could we put it in our domestic compost? Could we put it in our domestic recycling? Could we make clothes that feel beautiful but are actually only designed to last a short period of time, and for those materials to go back into the system? So we set the brief for the material scientists to achieve certain textures and feels, and every time they came back to us with a new evolution of material, we would then test it and try it out a little bit more and go back to them with some feedback on how it performed as a garment. So this is working with Inventia, who are part of the RISE group in Sweden. We found ways to seal and stabilize the material and use natural dyes and very low impact finishing technologies to create a new range of materials. We would then go back to them with the results of our tests and ask them to change the machine a little bit, or to tweak the way in which the paper was being produced, maybe the quantity of the pulp fibres. Kate then took the papers off to laser finishing technology and sonic finishing technologies to look at how really non-traditional textile manufacturing could be used to help these fast circular loops along. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we opened the new prototypes in the V&A Museum in London, this great exhibition called Fashioned from Nature, where we called the range Pulpit, and the paper-like textiles, or the textile-like papers, are on display along with a whole range of the samples that the team have been working on. I just included the little celebratory moment at the private view there, because it really shows the sort of success of many years of talking to each other, working really closely, material scientists with designers, getting over the sort of the hump of stupidity where, is that a really dumb question to ask? Is that obvious? You have to trust each other. You can't have a fear that the scientist will laugh at you for asking something stupid. And you can't worry about him thinking that your idea is too out there and too crazy. You have to sort of get into this safe space together and just let it happen, put it out there. And it takes a certain amount of bravery, a certain amount of stepping up. So some of this new role, this new designer of the future, needs to be about bravery too. It needs to be about finding the confidence to actually work in this way. My work's been with slow, and I'm looking at the right speed for polyester in the future. So at a time when we're all looking at petrochemical and fibrillation and sea pollution, the way in which we're using polyester needs to be completely re-examined. So on the one hand, the big conundrum for us, or the big contradiction, was the fastest products in a fast fashion shop might be made from the slowest materials. You most likely get a cheap polyester top for £5 to £10 in a fast fashion store, but the polyester has taken hundreds, millions of years from oil to be manufactured and made, and actually then 200 years to compost fully too. So we're using our slowest materials in our fastest contexts. So what is polyester if we were to make it truly slow? I set out to look at how we could make it last 200 years in product form. And through working closely with a group of consumers, I realised, and designers actually, who literally threw away my 100-year design cards, my 200-year design cards have got scribbled all over. People do not, industry designers do not want to think about, or cannot think about, deep longevity. You can't think of 100 years. You can't design a product for 100 years because the company culture or the company time frame often is so opposite to that. So in testing these tools and these ideas, the designers I was working with would literally scribble over the cards and bring it down to something that they could handle. And 50 years was something they felt they could handle, that they could see making a product sort of that would be out there for 20 years in one form, but then change. So we've modelled this garment to travel through different user groups in different contexts, from private ownership and use to rental and loan, and then being remanufactured twice, once from a shirt into a jacket and then from the jacket into a piece of jewellery. And this is ongoing work in Mistra 2, which is about to come out in November this year. And this has involved mapping how these transformations take place, as well as working then with engineers on who will be in this system, who are the new stakeholders in this system, who are the people helping it move between sections. To make something last 50 years, it's actually more than one company can do. It's actually a network. It's a whole community of people moving these products around. So these ideas get tested and developed within the company. And the company we're working with at the moment is Philippa K. And they'll be bringing out their own fast product and their own super slow product in November at the same time that we launch our prototypes too. And this is really another sort of string to the bow of the designer of the future. How can you have your own ideas? How can you share those with industry, get them tested and push how these are going to be implied in a real context? So the garment that Philippa K are making, they couldn't go to 50 years, they're going to 30 years. These are all things we're learning about. How far can our academic thinking link up with the realities of a company, and what does it mean to them to take on this kind of challenge? And this is the link through now, I think, to trash to cash. Everything is using the life cycle. We're always working around these steps within the product's life cycle, and we're always thinking about how to reduce the impacts of that stage, how to miss out a stage, actually, quite often, how you can then convey that design vision to a life cycle assessment expert to get them to help you score it and account for it, but then also how you can then use the life cycle to instruct in a certain area how the material science needs to change, or how the user behavior needs to change to keep that product in circulation. So designers of the future, they're not thinking in linear sketchbook book forms anymore. They're always thinking around these circular frameworks. So it brings us to the next project to look at together, and this is Trash to Cash. And this was started in 2015 and is a real challenge because it's not just my team of designers working in new contexts, it's a whole group of different designers coming together and then working with a whole different group of end users and manufacturers and material scientists. And everybody's got the same aim to take waste and turn it into new high value fibres, products. 18 partners across Europe and some 50 people meeting every couple of months to work out how we're going to do this, to share results, but not just share results in the moments we meet, but to actually work together as well. And this has taken a lot of bridge building. You can see the work here in the exhibition, over there. The 3 different material streams that are being developed are taking cellulosic, so basically taking waste paper and waste cotton and creating a new lyocell fibre, as well as making a polyester, recycled polyester material from old clothing, polar fleece clothing, which is then being turned into a recycled plastic and a coated materials. So we have 6 master cases which will be revealed at Dutch Design Week in October. But the whole process of developing these new fibres from waste has been one of constant negotiation and collaboration. Workshops are intense, sometimes quite fiery. 2 whole days of working closely together with different people then delivering the 92 different deliverables, be that a report on collection and sorting and new technologies, through to the technical results from the materials, through to reports about how we work together. What's the method that we're kind of creating as we come together? Meetings look like this sometimes. This is actually quite early on in the project. This first table are all talking about polyester, and then the table at the back, they're all talking about regenerated cellulose, and everybody's sharing their expertise and their point of view. And you kind of think it breaks down into the designers as one camp and the material scientists as the other, and the job is to kind of get those 2 groups to talk together. But actually what we learned is there are so many different design approaches, so many different ways to do design, that you actually need a methodology that bridges design expertise too, from those that are much more technical and have sort of been developing their work through a technical route, to those that have been purely focused maybe on the aesthetic, those that work in academia, those that have spent 20 years in industry. They're all classified as designers in the project, but they have very different ways of working and very different remits. We send postcards to each other, this is early on, with a provocation or a question at key moments, because sometimes it can't be verbalized, it can't be said out loud. Sometimes people just need to write it down and pin it on the wall, and this is one way we learn from each other and give each other feedback. And the materials we co-create, this is the sort of the commonality. Very early on, we realized whenever we bring a material to the table, something we found that exists already or something that we're in the middle of making, the quality and the tone of conversation will change. So this is important for our kind of tools and our ways of working in the future. And for me, I carried on with my shirts, but instead of remaking things myself to sell again or to making instruction videos for the user, this time I wanted to co-create new shirts, but with these people having ownership and having input and co-created them with me, but to actually find the most level place possible. And the levelest place I could imagine reaching was one of silent meditation together. So I introduced meditation as a practice, and then silently drawing each other's face as a way to make connections. And then I surveyed, after creating the shirt and this part of the project was over, I then sort of surveyed the responses. How did you feel about the other person? Did that change the way that you talked to them? From then on, were you able to work more closely with them? Did you befriend them? So we're using these very human attributes and approaches, as well as the material, sharing the material knowledge. This is what I mean by the holistic approach. It's one thing to know that we can achieve something technically with a material or with a circular economy. It's quite another to actually make it happen. And so the human aspects and the new models required are constantly being evolved alongside the new materials. One of the other design challenges I'm involved in Trash to Cash is taking old polyester clothing and creating this new sort of agglomerated pellet, which can then be made into materials for the automotive sector, which have a much lower footprint. And it's really thrown up the question for me about what will transportation be like in the future? How will we be traveling? What will that transportation look like? How do we want that experience to be? There's a lot of information out there about visions of driverless cars and Also, in a very good way, actually, the sort of the losing the individual car in a city and having this network of public transport is very, very different to the kind of public transport we're seeing today. But what are these interiors like? What are the materials like? Can we link clothing to the automotive sector in a way where more value is brought? So rather than having our polyester clothing fetish continue, could we be using this valuable material resource, creating durable products in new contexts? So some of my work has extended now from taking old clothing collected by SOEX. Part of the project early on was to take a ton of clothing and then to look at what kinds of fibres and material types were in that 1 ton. And the researchers in Sweden found 112 different blends. So recycling is complex through blends, we know this. And in any ton, we're going to have 112 or more challenges. So what we need is designers to sort of become experts in those different blends, in unpicking them, in designing alternatives, and understanding how they can be more effectively forward processed. So my material of choice was the polyester fleece, which became a melt spun, non-woven material, which I then took through different steps to find ways to put finishes on with a material which actually has a really low melting point, actually getting closer and closer to achieving photographic images, so that the interiors of the cars of the future could be made from old polyester clothes, but also contain more human, more soft, more natural finishes, rather than the hard, robotic, white, clean models we do quite often see. This is one of my last slides. It's me in a prayer mode, but it's sort of, I wanted to put it in because it kind of sums up the challenge of being a designer in these new circular contexts. There's a need to express your opinion, to express your vision, to enroll people into your idea, to create your own supply chain, really, to create your own network. So when my materials go away to Spain, to then go into the recycled resin to make them into hard plastics, I've been experiencing running problems, and I've been experiencing snapping, brittle problems. And it's quite tricky. I still find it tricky to come back to the table with a load of broken failures and go, oh, no, it hasn't quite worked yet, but I think we're onto something, you know. And it kind of, this picture just reminds me of the need to keep coming back to the table with the failures and to keep sharing them and not being afraid of them, and to find together the bits that are working and to grow those bits together. So my concluding slides are really about the way in which, by looking back through the design practice that I've been pursuing and the team that I've been building, the Centre for Circular Design, Kate Goldsworthy and I have started to see that there are these 4 different ways to be a designer, really, or 4 different ways to enact design for the circular economy. There's designing with waste streams, designing for recycling, doing design-driven material innovation, and designing to enable collaboration and communications. And this might be explained as designing new stuff from old stuff, designing new stuff so that it can be recycled in the future into other stuff. And actually, just those 2 alone are huge challenges. They're huge technical challenges, and we can't lose the aesthetics and we can't lose our craftsmanship. But we have to also understand that by getting involved at earlier stages in the making of the stuff, we can affect greater change too. So designing new stuff by getting involved much earlier on in the making, and that's a step into the world of the scientist. And finally, designing to assist others to work together to do the above. Anybody could do that. That could be a facilitator's job. So why do we think it's a designer's job? Because we think designers come with a certain kind of knowledge and a certain kind of expertise and a sensitivity, maybe, and that in our experience to date, we use facilitators. We have great friends that are facilitators. But when we facilitate as designers, more gets done somehow. There's a warmth there, there's a connection, and there's a realness to the way in which we make together. So we want to educate the designers of the future to be the connectors, the communicators, as well as to be the change themselves. So that's how the materials and the models and the mindsets maps in sort of 4 years after we created that first, then having spent more time working on circular materials, we can see that these three frames, these three lenses are still ringing true for us. And this, we believe, is the three sort of foundational posts, if you like, for building the future of design education. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Becky. Come here. Come here. So there are some questions for Becky. Someone went. I will take this. Please.
Alessandra Buffanti, it was a pleasure to hear. Which is your actual relation with the Italian industry? I mean, which, I don't want to know the names, but do you cooperate with several Italian producer of fiber, of textile, of brands, so far?
Yeah, why am I here? Yeah. Well, I think mostly through the Trash to Cash project, which is nearing the end now. So really, we work quite closely with Grado Zero Innovation. So it's at the pre-stage to manufacturing and industry. I think the feeder stage. Right, we're not working directly with any Italian manufacturers at the moment. Having said that, in my centre, there are PhD researchers who are looking at mechanical recycling in Prato and starting from there. Very interesting, because she understands that if we can extend the life of materials through the kind of work that goes on in Prato, then we can actually predict and contain and control what we're feeding into the loop, so that we know what we're getting when we're doing the chemical recycling, ultimately. So there's a case study, but no, we're open to offers. Does that answer your question?
Other question? No. Okay, Anna?
It's not actually a question, just I noticed that most of your speech was about people. So how, being at the center of all these circular talks that we are having in the last years, there is always this, how can I say, knot in the circle that's made of users. So and I found particularly interesting the fact that you consider people and their relationship with garments and with the objects in general, because at the very end everything passes through them. So and they have, in a way, the control over the circle, and that's a very critical point. So just fashion, of course, is particularly critical because, but not just for that, even from packaging to whatever, people behavior makes very much sense into the a circle working or not working. So I was just wondering whether you had anything to add on that.
Absolutely, really well observed. So I should say two things. First of all, I'm the people part of the centre in a way that's sort of my interest in social science and anthropology, and being a designer that's quite a sociable person. I think just that's the kind of lens that I'm putting on the work. A lot of the team work very technically, and actually their knowledge and their approach to the circular economy might be through technology and science much more. So my job's almost to bring them into the people conversations, and their job is to sort of upskill me in terms of technology. So I don't want to give a false representation of the centre. but what you're talking about is very much on our minds all the time, and has been for a really long time, because whilst I'm part of quite a few campaigns and want to see the change in the user, as designers, we've always felt very empowered to make beautiful things. If you make something beautiful that works well, that sells well, that offers the user something joyful, you've won half the battle already. So we've always gone on the premise that if you innovate, if you're a good designer, you'll make a good product which will be used in an effective way because the user will want it. So rather than trying to reduce their consuming habits by making them feel guilty or say this is wrong, we say, well, okay, if you're going to need change in your wardrobe, you're going to want something a different color next season. Let's look at how we do that. And as we do that, let's make sure it's lower impact, that it's had better ethical production approaches. So our approach is to offer them something better, build it and they will come. That's the way that we see bringing the user with us on our design vision. It's actually really under-researched how users will be part of the circular economy in the future. Copenhagen Business School has started to look at different frameworks, different approaches, different assumptions. You know, recycled clothing costs more, is of poorer quality. They're unearthing all of these assumptions that the user has, and we can sort of see that it's a minuscule change that's afoot. We're all terribly excited about circular economy, but they're finding a very small percentage of people that are actually going out and looking for recycled materials as a user, trying to find that label or trying to find that product. So what else have I got to say? I suppose it's working through the brands. It's constantly asking the brands, a brand like Philippa K, the Mistra Future Fashion product, what will your users do with this? What will they want to do with it? How many people go back to their second-hand shop? Can we improve the flow of those goods? Yeah, so it's on our minds all the time, and I think we all need to be thinking much more about how the people are going to close the gaps in the loops.
And just to add personal information about Becky that I think close a little bit this discussion. At a certain point, when I met for the first time Becky in Trash to Cash project, she told me that I was teaching sustainability as professor, and at a certain point I realized that I cannot teach sustainability if I don't bring this topic in my personal life. So she started from that moment to avoid to buy new clothes. So she buy just second-hand clothes, and she work on these clothes, reprinting them, working on them. So I think that this holistic vision that sometimes is quite far away in certain center words from the, let's say, practical circular economy, the application of circular economy, indeed it's very close, because the topic is the people and the person, and how these people and person face this problem. So this is just to say that this holistic vision is not just a teaching stuff or utopian stuff. It's applied also in the real life of Becky. Okay, another question, please.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for your inspiring discussion. It was really interesting. You said you work within the industry as well, with FIK and H&M. How do you because you're also saying it's a holistic industry, how do you did you find any barrier between your project, for instance, the polyester, and the industry itself saying, for instance, this might be costing so much, I can't put in production this?
Yeah, all the time, absolutely, which is, of course, what our role is. So, you know, as researchers, we're the R&D department, essentially. So we'll do projects, and then we'll come into the company and we'll say, you could do it this way, you could do it this way. Very few R&D departments then go into the further discussions of marketing or production or logistics. And that's the bit we were finding, particularly at H&M, where those designers are amazing. You know, there's 350 of them based in Stockholm. They are totally buying into sustainability. They're totally coming up with really good ideas. But us as a group, after 2 years, couldn't bridge the distance to the production office in China and the decisions that they're making and what the buyers are wanting to put out there. So it's not just us as a team of researchers having these barriers, it's within the companies and beyond as well. So that's really probably why I'm also talking about the holistic approach, is that we need to be better communicators. We need to take on a more rounded skill set. You know, we have to still be the material experts and the makers, but we have to reach out even further and connect up those conversations. So I've spent 6 years working with several different people that help me understand what those gaps are about and how you work more in a management consultancy context as a design researcher to show them that the change is possible. So it's actually very little goes into production at the end of the day. But I think it's like climbing Mount Everest. You're making base camps all the time. You're going up a further step all the time. You're taking all the knowledge with you all the time. And, you know, we're getting there. Trash to Cash is definitely getting there.
Last question.
Hi, I'm Lorenzo. Thank you very much for the speech. It was very interesting. I just would like to understand a little bit more if Italy is better or worse or wherever position to face all the challenges related to the circular economy, because at the end of the day it's a cultural issue, let me say. So what we face in our business life is Northern European countries are not much ahead of us, and what is the distance between our reality and
I can't answer that as a UK person undergoing Brexit. I would say you know, you've got the innovators, haven't you? You've got a particular set of barriers around your own government infrastructures and the relationships that have grown up historically and traditionally. But you've got the expertise here in materials more than anywhere else, I would say. I had lunch before I came here and I was reflecting on what it was like in America when I was doing work with a corporation and how I used to travel between North Carolina and Sweden. And it was like 2 different planets. The Swedes are very advanced, but less so than Italy in some ways. And then it was like going back in time when I went to the States. So we've all got our own challenges, but that just means that we've all got our own unique opportunities at the end of the day. And I'll move to Italy. What can I say?
Thanks very much, Becky. Thanks. And now I want to switch in Italian. Ok, ritorniamo italiani e cominciamo questa panel discussion. Volevo anticiparvi che ovviamente a chiusura della panel discussion ci sarà un cocktail all'ingresso vicino alla My Own Gallery, sotto, quindi dobbiamo uscire nuovamente, e ci sarà l'opportunità di visitare la My Own Gallery con le opere di Lucchetti, con una visita guidata, ecco, per chi lo desiderasse. Poi ci sarà anche sul roof l'evento di Fashion Revolution per le persone che sono state invitate all'evento. Quindi vorrei chiamare per la panel discussion Anna Pellizzari. Take a seat, please. Executive Director. No, prima di là. Sì, qui. Executive Director di Material Connection Italia. Filippo Servalli, Marketing Director Sustainability di Radici Group. Poi Alessandra Buffanti, Presidente Sezione Bambini Sistema Modi Italia. E Lorenzo Minetti, co-founder di Quagga. E invece Marina Spadafora ci raggiungerà il prima possibile, appena le sarà possibile, proprio perché è impegnata con l'organizzazione dell'evento che si terrà appunto sul tetto, ma ci raggiungerà per chiudere un attimo con un altro punto di vista molto particolare sul concetto di responsabilità ambientale e sociale legato al settore tessile e abbigliamento. Quindi comincerei con